All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. To thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Cheshvan. Steve and Teri Czinn for dedicating all the Shuman Joshos this month in memory of Steve's father, the commemoration of his Yahrzeit, Bunim, Tzvi ben Chaim, Leah Sol as the zechus refuah for Ilana bas Esther, and for all of those wounded in Eretz Yisroel. Yonason and Rachel Wolff for a complete and lasting refuah for Refuel Yitzchak Baruch ben Esther, Cherry and Sora Wolasky and the zechus refuah sheleimah for Zecharya Dov ben Perel Shira, Azriel and Iris Miller, in the zechus of the holy soldiers of the IDF, and the merit of our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisroel. A week of learning sponsors, Robert Emas in honor of the Yahrzeit of his mother, Rus Bas Sora, and an appreciation for the entire Daf Yomi shiur, as well as an anonymous sponsor in honor of Yoni Frager's birthday. Good. All right. So with that, Baruch Hashem, let us begin. We truly hope that in Meretz Hashem our learning is a zechus for all of those who need a refuah, for all of those neshamas who need an aliyah, and Meretz Hashem truly in the zechus of our precious soldiers, of our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisroel, may they be victorious in Meretz Hashem in all of their endeavors. Amen. So with that, let us begin. Okay. Good. Today's daf is Ayin Beis 72. We are picking up on Ayin Aleph Beis 71b. 71b, we left off Amarav Shtikusa de Bavel Hainu Yichusa, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, about 20 lines up from the bottom. So we'll say, if you remember again, the Gemara ended off with a fascinating statement. The Gemara spoke about the idea that Shtikusa, the willingness to remain silent, right, and the willingness to avoid confrontation and avoid machlokas, ultimately is a sign of genealogical purity. So Rav said, "Shtikusa de Bavel, Hainu Yichusa." It's the willingness again of the residents of Bavel. Shtikusa, to be silent. I must remember again, specifically we saw that the willingness to be silent represents the idea that halacha l'maisa, a person is humble, a person is machlokes averse. That in and of itself highlights a refined state of yichus. So the Gemara is that so? V'ha ikla Rav lebei Rav Shafi chala ubatak b'hu. Yet Rav once went to Bavel and he investigated the shidduch. He investigated the family for a shidduch. The Gemara says Maila bichusta. When it says he investigated, it doesn't mean he looked into the yichus. So you see from here that even in Bavel you still have to look into yichus. Lo bishtikusa. In fact, what Rav was looking into was, how do these people conduct themselves when they are in the midst of machlokas? Are they argumentative people? Are they difficult people? Are they always arguing? Or ultimately, again, do they pursue the path of peace when it comes to others? Halki kamalu, beduku, check into them, ishaski, iloshaski. Are they silent or not silent? Again, I will say, once again, the idea over here is not that a person always has to be silent. But we all know this. You could tell a lot about a person by how they deal with difficult or confrontational situations, right? We see this in life, people who appear so nice and so wonderful, yet they get into a little bit of a volatile situation, and wow, like you see a totally different side of the individual with a fundamental and complete lack of midos. On the other hand, you find people that even when faced with adverse circumstances are shasuki, ultimately again, not shasuki, but shaski, right? Ultimately, they're quiet, refined individuals. The ability to have that level of restraint represents a heightened sense of genealogical purity. Amar Yehuda Amar Rav, Imra Isa is incredible Gemara. Imra Isa Shnei Adam Shemizgarim Zebozeh. If you see two people who are constantly arguing with each other, so the Gemara says, Shemes Puzzle Yish Be'achamehem. There's a genealogical flaw in one of those individuals. Ve'in Manichin Osoli David Bechavero. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not allowing the shidduch to happen between the two sides. It's an interesting insight, right? So in other words, if there are two people that are constantly arguing, it could be a sign that the Ribono Shalom wants to keep separate those two families. Amar Rabbi Shmuel Levi. If ultimately again you see two families who are arguing with each other, ultimately again there's a genealogical flaw in one of them. And Chash Baruch Hu is not allowing one family to connect with the other. Amra Papa, Sab Mishvei Rav, Bavel Bria, Suppose listen to this. Papa said the name of Rav. Bavel Bria. Bavel is healthy. Mishon, Mesa, the city of Mishon, the area of Mishon is dead. Madai Chola, Madai, right? The place of Madai is ill. And Ilim Gosasas. Ilim is a Goses. Is a Goses. I'm about to say Goses is someone who is so ill that they face imminent death. Imminent death. So I'm about to say, so the idea over here is Rav Papa says, this is descriptive of their genealogical states, genealogical purity. So Bavel is healthy, i.e. Bavel enjoys a cheskas kashrus when it comes to yichus. Meshon, apparently we're going to see the people in Meshon were genealogically flawed, and therefore again, so to speak, they're dead. Madai chola, people in Madai, they're ill. Ill means some of them are genealogically fit, some of them are not. And the Ilana is a goses. So most of the Gemara says, Ma bein cholan of the gosesin. What's interesting, the goses and a chola? The Gemara says, Rov cholan l'chaim. The majority of people who are ill live. Rov gosesin lemisa. The majority of gosesin die. So that's another way of saying ultimately again that Madai, the majority of people are genealogically fit, the minority are not. In Elam, the majority are genealogically unfit, a minority are kosher. So we'll say, so now we spent a lot of time speaking about the idea that amazingly enough, in this respect, Bavel is superior to Eretz Yisroel, in that again, Bavel enjoys a level of genealogical superiority over Bavel. Which the Gemara asks, so what are the borders of Bavel? What are the borders of Bavel? So the Gemara says, Rav Amar ad Nar Asak. Rav says Bavel extends until the Asak River. Ushmuel Amar ad Nar Yoni, to the Yoni River. Le'el B'digla. So we'll say, when looking upstream, remember again, Bavel borders on multiple bodies of water, as we'll see. So ultimately, again, when you look at the upper border of Bavel, by the Diglas, by the Tigris River. So how far does it extend? So Adhecha, Rav Amar ad Bagda va'avna. Rav says until Bagda, these are places. Ushmuel Amar ad Mushchani v'lo Mushchani b'klal. Shmuel says it comes to Mushchani, but Mushchani is not included in the borders of Bavel. I Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba Amar Shmuel Mushchani Hariya Kegol Yochsin. But Rabbi Chia bar Abba saying to Shmuel that Mushchani is like the diaspora in terms of Yochsin. Ella Ad Mushchani Mushchani Beklal. So rather it means upstream, the border of Bavel goes up until Mushchani, and Mushchani is included in Bavel. Okay, L'tachlis Pediglas Ad Hecha. So we'll say, so again, when looking downstream on the Tigris River, how far downstream does Bavel extend? Amar Shmuel Ad Apamya Tasa. So ultimately until the lower Apamya. It's the name of the place again. So the Gemara says, Tarti Apamya Havyon. There are actually two places named Apamya. Chada Ilasa, the Chada Tasya. One is higher up and one is lower down. Chada Kshera, the Chada Psula. One, the residents are genealogically kosher, and the other, the residents are genealogically pasul. Ubein Chada lechada Parsa. And between one Apamya and another Apamya is a Parsa. Vikakapti Ahadadi. They're very makpid. The residents of each Apamya are very makpid on each other. They don't even lend each other a fire, right? They don't even lend each other like a candle or a match, nothing like that. So the Gemara says, and how do you know which one is pasul, which one is kasher? The one that speaks the language of Meshon, those are the ones who are pasul. Okay, so we'll say when looking at the border of Bavel on the Euphrates, how far up on the Euphrates does Bavel extend? So Rav Amar ad Akra the Tulkabani. It goes up until, again, these are names of places. It goes up until Akra the Tulkabani. Shmuel Amar ad Gishra de Beipras. Ultimately, again, until the bridge on the Euphrates. Rabbi Yochanan Amar ad Ma'abra de Gizma. The Gizma crossing, okay? Layet Abaye v'tim Rav Yosef Adrav. So Abaye reacted very strongly to these positions. He felt that some of these borders were incorrect. So literally it means he cursed Rav. Now again, that sometimes it doesn't literally mean he cursed Rav. In this verse, he was very unhappy with Rav's position. We're good. So Layet Abaye v'tim Rav Yosef Adrav. Adrav Layet ad Shmuel lo Yait. I don't understand. It was said about Rav's position. Not about Shmuel. Shmuel's is even further up. Rather, again, Abaye was upset at Rav, and all the more so he was upset at Shmuel as well. The other possibility is he was upset at Rabbi not at Shmuel. The Gishra the Bei Pras Litesai Havikai. And it's possible again that in Abaye's days, the bridge of Pras was moved downstream, so to speak, top of Ayin Beis, 72a Va'idnahu Tedayua Parsoi. And it was now ultimately again that the Persians ultimately again went ahead and took it from where it was, and then went ahead and moved it upstream. So originally when Shmuel said his position, it was actually lower downstream. That Abaye agreed with, and then the Persians subsequently moved it further upstream. Okay, verse 72a, first line. Amalei Abaye Rav Yosef. Lahag Gisa de Pras Arecha. We'll say, what about on the western side? Right? On Rashi says, Sad Marav. On the western side of the Euphrates River, ultimately, again, how far does Bavel extend? Amalei, my daitech. What are you asking? Look, first of all, look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, it's the last wide line in Rashi. Lahai gisa de pras adhecha, bisvasa klape mayrav adhecha mispashet rachba shal Bavel. On the western side, how far does Bavel extend? So the Gemara says, my daitech. So what are you worried about? What are you worried about? So the Gemara says, mishum biram. I'm not worried, but I'm asking regarding Biram. Biram was a city. He wanted to know what was the status of Biram. Is Biram included in Bavel? Not included in Bavel? To which the Gemara says, Biram, nasabi. Well, I can answer you like this. The most miyuchasdik families, right? The most genealogically fit families from Pumbedisa would marry into the families of Biram, which indicates that what? That Biram obviously was a very genealogically fit place. Amar Papa, Kimachlokis lo yuchsen kach machlokis le inyan gin. So I will say this is interesting. The same way that we have a machlokes about the borders of Bavel when it comes to this, right? I will say again, remember, why are we trying to figure out what the borders of Bavel are? Because remember, Bavel enjoys the highest level of genealogical purity. Well, again, so obviously then we need to know what's Bavel. Right, what's considered in Bavel? So now the Gemara just suggests the same way that you have a machlokes when it comes to Bavel. For Yuchsin, what are the borders of Bavel? When it comes to Yichus, kach machlokes le'inyan gin. So too there is a machlokes regarding gin. I will say, what's the machlokes regarding gin? Take a look at Rashi. It's almost right across in Rashi. Kach machlokes le'gin. The kaimalon hamevi get mishara aratzos tzarach shiyomar befanei nechtav ubefanei nechtam lefi she'ein bikiyin l'shma. Va'mevi get me Eretz Yisroel Bavel inuzarach lomar ubavel harik Eretz Yisroel legin shav himayu chachamim ubekin shvas. Well, so remember again, first Mishnah in Mesechas Gittin. When you bring a get from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisroel, you have to say, the witness has to say, b'fanei nechtav u'b'fanei nechtam. The get was written in front of me, signed in front of me. Why? So it's a machlokes Rabba and Rav and Gittin. But again, we go with the idea lefi she'ein b'kiyim l'shma. Because in Chutz La'aretz, they were not proficient in writing a get, l'shma, for the sake of this man and the sake of this woman. Therefore, in order to certify the l'shma status of the get, you need this testimony. So I will say, Bavel enjoyed the same status as Eretz Yisroel. Namely, in Bavel, they were B'kiyah l'shma, which made sense. You had yeshivas in Bavel, you had rabbanim in Bavel. So therefore, Bavel had the same status, ultimately, again, as Eretz Yisroel. So the Gemara says, therefore, I will say, so Rapapa says, the same machlokes, therefore the same machlokes at the borders of Bavel for Yichus were the same machlokes of the borders of Bavel for Gittin. Rabbi Yosef says, no, machlokes l'gittin, l'yuchsin, aval l'gittin, divrei hakol, ad arba tanyana di gishra. So Rabbi Yosef says, no, the machlokes about the borders of Bavel was only for Yichus, but for Gittin, everyone knows the borders of Bavel. Bavel ultimately again Bavel extends up until the lower swamp, right? The lower reed swamp, ultimately again by the bridge. Okay, so apparently that was a meaningful marker for them. Fine. Amarami bar Abba Chavil Yama Tchelta de Bavel. So we'll say there was this place called Chavil Yama. That's the name of a place. Chavil Yama was the most beautiful part. Tchelta was the most beautiful part ultimately of Bavel. Rashi says over here, Chavil Yama Shem Makom, it's the name of a place. Tchelta de Bavel, Meklila v'tiv arta shal Bavel lo yuchsin. I will say it's not really referring to aesthetic beauty over here, rather it's referring to his genealogical purity. So as much as Bavel has this elevated status regarding genealogical fitness, Chavel Yama was like the purest of the pure. Purest of the pure. Shunya v'guvya, Tchelta de Chavel Yama. I will say apparently within Chavel Yama, there were these other areas, I don't know, maybe neighborhoods. Shunya and Guvya were in Chavel Yama, or even were the purest of the pure. All right. We'll say first by line. Ravina Amar Av Tzitzura. Ravina said even the area of Tzitzura also was the best of genealogical purity. That supports this. Hanan ben Pinchas says Chavel Yama Tchelta de Bavel. So Chavel Yama, again, I will say the most beautiful, again, not aesthetic beauty, but ultimately, again, the most genealogically fit area of Bavel. Shunya v'Guvya v'Tzitzura. So Shunya, Guvya, Tzitzura, we'll call these like neighborhoods or areas in Chavel Yama. Tchelta de Chavel Yama. They are, again, the most genealogically fit areas of Chavel Yama. Okay, Amra Papa. Va'inna i'arvi behu kusai. Papa says, unfortunately, again, now all of these areas have lost their standing. Why? Because the Kusim got mixed in over there. The Kusim moved in, right? The Kusim moved in, and ultimately, again, it just changed the genealogical makeup of the area. So the Gemara says, Velohi. Actually, the Gemara says that's not accurate. That's not what happened. Isesahu de ba'aminahu velo yavilai. No, what ended up happening was there was a Kusi who wanted to marry a girl from one of these areas. They didn't allow the shidduch to go through. So again, what we're essentially saying is like a corrupted game of telephone a little bit, right? It went from there was a Kusi who wanted to marry a girl from one of these areas, which was correct, to the Kusim moved into the areas. But the Kusim, in fact, did not move into the areas. Okay, incredible. My Chavel Yama. So we'll say, what is Chavel Yama? Amra Papa Zu Pras de Borsi. We'll say this is the area called Pras de Borsi. This was, again, another descriptive name of the area. Hahu Gavra, Damar Lahu. There was a guy who said, Ana min Shot Mishot. I am from the area of Shot Mishot. Okay, so Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Ragla va'Amar Shot Mishot Ben Hanaros Omedas. Shot Mishot is situated between the rivers. So the Gemara says, really? Bechi Ben Hanaros Omdos. The Shot Mishot actually sit between the rivers. Is that true? So the Gemara says, My Havi Amar Bai Amar Bicham Bar Ukva Amar Biosi Rabbi Chanina Ben Hanaros Hariki Gol Yuchsin. So we'll say they used to refer to Bavel as the area between the rivers. Right, because Bavel was situated in between the Tigris and the Euphrates. So ultimately, again, what Rabbi Yitzchak was saying was, Shot Mishot has genealogical fitness like Bavel, like the area that sits between the rivers. Okay? Behecha Kaima, where is Shot Mishot? Am Rabbi Yochanan, Me'ihi Dikira Ulael. It's from Ihi Dikira and above. V'ham Rabbi Yochanan, Ad Ma'avarta de Gizma. I bet Rabbi Yochanan said until the Gizma crossing. Rabbaye Ritzua Nafka. There's a very narrow strip of land that extends between these two areas. Okay, so we'll say the Gemara goes weiter. Good. Okay, the more to talk about this, we'll go weiter. So the Gemara says, Amar Vika Bar Av and Amar Rav Chananel, Amarav Chilazon Nihavar Chilazon and Nihavnad Harihi Kagola Liyoksin. So we'll say now what we're doing over here is as follows. After going ahead and solidifying the fact that Bavel has the highest, we'll call it highest genealogical rating, so to speak, right? We're now establishing that, and now after speaking about the actual borders of Bavel, even though those are subject to some level of dispute, we're now identifying other areas that also enjoy a heightened genealogical status. So, for example, if Hanan says the name of Rav, these areas, most of these names of places, Chilazon and Nehavnad, these are names of places. Harikagol Liyuchsen, they are like Bavel when it comes to Yichus. When we say like Gola, it's a reference to Bavel. Like Bavel when it comes to Yichus. Don't listen to that. That's not true. Yevamahi denafle lehasam. I will say ultimately again. He's just saying that ultimately again because he had a yevama that felt him in one of these places. So he's trying to say that ultimately again they have a heightened genealogical status. All right, Amarle atu didi Amarle atu didi. You think I'm espousing my own position? Rav Chananel it's Rav Chananel's position. So the Gemara says. Azol Shilu Rav Chananel. They went and they asked Rav Chananel about this. Amalahu Haki Amarav Chilazon Nihavnad Harihi Kagola. So indeed Rav Chananel said, yes, these places have the genealogical status of Babel. To go liuchsin, upligid Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana, argues Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana. Why? Dam Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana, my dichsiv, what's the meaning of the pasuk that says, but the Gemara now is quoting over here from the pasuk in Malachim, Vayanchim bechalchach ubechavar nahar gozan va'are madai. So literally again, so I will say this is talking about over here when the king of Ashur uprooted segments of Klal Yisrael and resettled them in other areas. So what does it say? He resettled them in Chalchach, Chabor, and Nahar Gozen, Va'are Madai. So we'll say, what are these places? Chala, Zu Chilazon, Chabar, Zu Hadiab, Nahar Gozen, Zu Ginzak, Are Madai, Zu Chamnan, V'chavrosel. V'amrila, Zu Nahavnad, V'chavrosel. Other sage refers to so Nahavnad and surrounding areas. My Chavrosel, what is that? Amr Shmuel, Krach, Mushchi, Chuski, Verumki. Okay, different places. Amr Rabbi Yochanan, the Kulon Lipsul. But ultimately, we'll say all these places do not enjoy a genealogical fitness. Ultimately, again, they all pass. So if you look at Rashi, right before the lines get right, Rashi says, V'chol Lipsul, Komakum Shegalu Ashvatim, Nitmu Ov V'kochab Mimnosehem, V'oved Kochavim V'eved Abba Abbas Yisrael, Afilu Mandam Havlad Mamzer, Lo Havi, Pagum Yohavi. So this is very interesting. So remember, this is referring to the exile of the 10 tribes and the resettling of the 10 tribes in foreign lands. The Gemara just points out over here, Rabbi Yochanan says something amazing. Wherever the 10 tribes were exiled to, ultimately, again, any vestige of genealogical fitness was lost. The 10 tribes intermarried. So because they intermarried, ultimately, again, any level of genealogical fitness was lost by the 10 tribes. So is Moshchi the same thing as Mushchani? This place of Moshchani that has the status of Babel, ultimately again for Yichus. Ella Mushchi l'chod or Mushchani l'chod. So I'll say, so apparently again there are two places, Mushchi and Mushchani. Mushchi does not enjoy genealogical fitness, Mushchani does. So also the Gemara goes right to Utzlas Alon Bepuma Ben Shinel. So I will say, so this is in Sefer Daniel. So ultimately, again, this is referring to the vision of Daniel. So in Daniel's vision, he sees multiple animals, and in one of the animals that he sees, right, he sees ultimately again a chaya. He sees an animal that has ribs. Tlas Ilai Bepuma, 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. What is this a reference to? So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Zuchi Lazon Hadyab Unetzivin. I will say these are the areas, the cities of Chilazon, Hadyab and Netzivin, Shepamim Bal Asan, Upamim Paltasan. Sometimes, ultimately, again, they are. If you look at Rashi says over here, first wide line, Rashi says, Bechaya Tlas Ilan Bepuma, Bechaya Hashniya Shemar Daniel Ksev V'hi Babel. This is a reference to the animal, second animal in Daniel's vision, which was supposed to be a reference or a vision of the Babylonian Empire. So ultimately, Annabelle says, so it has these 3 ribs in its teeth, referencing these 3 cities of Chilazon, Hadyab, and Netzivin. Sometimes those 3 areas were absorbed by Babel, and sometimes they were. So apparently, again, these were like constantly contested areas, right? That were sometimes part of one empire, sometimes part of a different empire. So the Gemara says, "Va'aru chiyua achare tanya dumya ledov." Then I will say, he said, I saw another in Daniel's vision. There was another animal that resembled a bear. Who does that refer to? So I will say, so the second animal he saw ultimately was a reference to Babel. The third animal, the Gemara says, was reference to Tanya of Yosef ilu parsiim. So the bear-like animal, this was a reference to the Persians. Sha'ochlan v'shosin kidov, they eat and they drink like bears. So apparently Persians eat a lot and drink a lot. Umisrbalin kidov, and ultimately again they're obese like a bear. Big people. Rashi says bali basa, right? Big people. Lashon uvi v'shum. Rashi says it's a lashon of thickness and fat. Uba'alman askud. So I will say, so they eat like a bear, they drink like a bear, they're big like a bear. Umagadlin seyar, and they're hairy like a bear. Right, so this is the description of the Persians. The Gemara says, so kidov ve'im lahem menucha kidov, and ultimately again they have no rest like a bear. So apparently a bear ultimately again is never really fully at rest. fully at rest. So the mice again. So that's it. So both say. So again, it's Daniel's reference. I don't. It's ancient Persia. I don't know if that it refers. Right. So this was Daniel's. This was Daniel's reference. Ultimately, again to the bears, to the Persian Empire. So the Gemara says as follows. Good. Ve'ela menucha kidov. Rabbi Ami ki avachaza parsad dirachiv. Whenever he would see a Persian riding on a horse, Amar hainu duba naida. He would say that is a moving bear. A moving bear. So they would call the Persians the bears. Okay? So Amarle Rebbe Levi, Harini Parsim, show me the Persians. Amarle Domim Lechayol Shabes David. The Persians, they were fierce warriors. So again, they were like, he compared them to the soldiers of David HaMelech, right? I would say David HaMelech had a very strong army. So again, whenever Rabbi Levi, right, when Rabbi Levi would say, show me the Persians, he would say, the Persians look like the soldiers of David HaMelech. Harini Chabarin, show me the Chabarin. I would say Chabarin were another nation. Domin Lamalachi Chabala. If you want to see the Chabarin look like angels of destruction. Rashi says over here, Chabarin, Osan hasmucha leparsim. So we'll say, so the Chabarin, who were known to be incredibly destructive people, they were the neighbors of the Persians. Umashchisim heim v'tarfarim heim yoserim parsim. They were fierce and destructive. So if somebody said, show me the Chabarin themselves looked like angels of destruction. Hareini Yishmaelim, show me Yishmaelim, the descendants of Yishmael. Domim l'seirim shal beis hakisei. They resemble the demons who inhabit the bathroom. The demon who, what does that mean? Rashi says, l'seirim milubashim shchorim v'domim l'shedim. They wear black, and ultimately again they resemble demons. Incredible, I will say, incredible. Harini tamidi chacham Bavel is beautiful. Show me the tamidi chacham in Bavel, the Torah scholars in Bavel. Domim lemalachi hasharis. So beautiful, I will say. What does the Talmud Chacham look like? The Talmidei Chachamim, what do they look like? Ultimately, again, they look like Malachi Hasharis. They look like angels. Rabbi say, I look at Rashi. Rashi says, what does it mean that the Talmidei Chachamim look like angels? So beautiful. Dom Malachi Hasharis, Rashi says. Both say it's about 5 lines up from the end of Rashi. Domim Malachi Hasharis, Levushim Levanim. So first of all, Talmidei Chachamim would often wear white. Vatufim ki malachi, and they're wrapped. They were wrapped in white, like malachi. Muksiv va'ish levush abadim v'hachinam yaminim b'am ligin. All Rabbi Yehuda Shem is atei v'yoshe b'sadinim. It's Yatzin. V'dom malach Hashem mechdar. So it says that's the idea over here. The Talmidei Chacham of Bavel often used to wear white. So they wore white. They were wrapped in white. And again, Rashi calls multiple psukim that makes reference to the Malachim as being wrapped in white as well. Incredible, I will say. So listen to this Gemara. Ki havanecha nafshei de Rebbe. It will say when Rebbe was about to die, Amar Homanya Ika Babavel. So it will say he said as follows. Rashi says Homanya, right? That was the name of a place. There's the name of a city in Bavel called Homanya. Kula Amonoihi. All the people who live there, ultimately, again, are all from the nation of Ammon. Right? So the Gemara says, right? Chavanya Ika Babavel, Kula Amonoihi. Misagria Ika Babavel, there's another city called Misagria, Kula de Mamzerehi, all Mamzerim. Birka Ika Babavel, there's a place named Birka in Bavel, Shnei Achim Yesh, there are 2 brothers who live there, Shemachlifin Nishosei and Zelozeh, who switch wives with each other, and therefore their children are mamzerim. Birta desache ika bavel. There's this place called Birta desache in Bavel. So the Gemara says, Hayom saro me'achori hamakom. Ultimately, I will say the residents there are Rabbi Carson. The residents there just turn their backs on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I will say, now ultimately again, what happened in Birta desache, right? What happened in this place? Good, Rashi, yeah. Good. What happened in Birta de Satya? So let's listen to this. So again, let's say, just to give context, Rebbe is dying. As he's about to die, he's sharing certain relevant information. So the first thing the Gemara says is, he's handing out just a ton of genealogical information that he had not shared up until this point. And I will say, this references back to yesterday's Gemara. If you remember again, the Gemara said that we have this concept of Mishpachos Shenitmu Nitmu. That once kind of like a genealogical flaw has kind of receded into the periphery, we're not megala it. we don't reveal it. But remember, what did the Gemara say? But Talmidei Chachamim who know it should what? Should share it once every 7 years. In other words, someone should be the holder of genealogical records. Someone should have information. So see what's happening over here. Rebbe on his deathbed is who's around the deathbed? Who's around the deathbed at the time the Rebbe is going to die? His students. Talmidim. So B'Pashtos, what it sounds like over here is he's sharing, so he's not broadcasting this to the public, he's sharing this with his Talmidim so that some people know. Okay, what was it? The next thing he says is, in the city of Birta de Sacha, in Bavel, the residents turned their back on the Kadosh Baruch Hu. They left religion. What happened? They're both. So listen to this. Da'akvi pira bekavri b'shabsa, va'azal v'tzadu b'hu b'shabsa. They both say, what happened? There was a fish pond. There was a fish pond in this place, Birta de Sacha. It overflowed on Shabbos. They both say, what happens? It overflowed with fish, which means that there was a whole bunch of fish on Shabbos. What did the residents do? They came and they caught the fish. Right? Again, there was like a windfall, but it happened on Shabbos. I will say, you're not allowed to fish on Shabbos, not allowed to catch fish on Shabbos. Seidah, trapping or hunting is one of the Lamed Tes Malachas, so you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. So they violated Shabbos. Vishamtinu Rabbi Achad Rabbi Oshia. And ultimately, Rabbi Achad Rabbi Oshia, he excommunicated them. We'll say, as a result, what happens? V'ishtamud. Ultimately, again, as a result of being excommunicated, they all left the fold. I will say it's a very profound Gemara, because I will say what it does teach us is as follows: that one sometimes does have to be careful about people make mistakes. People make mistakes. We'll say, how you deal with people in the aftermath of their mistakes shapes their relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Yiddishkeit going forward. And sometimes if a person makes mistakes and you throw the book at them, so a person will say, you know what, this isn't worth it. This isn't worth it. Obviously, if you're throwing the book at me like this, I did something so severe. If I did something so severe, perhaps there's no way to rehabilitate myself, so they just leave. Life, we encounter this all the time. We encounter this with our children, right? In leadership capacities, a leader might encounter this with how to deal with constituencies who made mistakes. But Lamaisa, the idea is always in the aftermath of a mistake to always deal with it with love, and to always deal with it with understanding. And again, as a parent, a child makes a mistake, it's easy to come down hard, it's easy to get upset, it's easy to get angry, but just understand, more often than not, that could sometimes cause greater level of alienation. So a parent has to discipline, and a parent has to, so to speak, explain, and there have to be repercussions for things that are done wrong, but it has to be with love. Right? Punishment should never be punitive, but punishment should always be rehabilitative. In the aftermath of failure, the goal is to rehabilitate, not simply to punish. Push too hard, and people just simply walk away. Incredible Yisod. Akra da Agma Ikba Bavel. So I'll say there's this place. The name's the place is Akra da Agma in Bavel. So what happened? Ikba Bavel. Adabar Ava. Yes. So we'll say this is all. I just want to point out. This is all Rebbe talking. This whole thing is Rebbe talking on his deathbed. So there's this place, Akra da Agman Babel, Adabar Ava Yishba, and there's a guy, Adabar Ava, who lives there. Hayom Amud Beis, Hayom Yoshev Becheko Shel Avram Avinu. Today, he sits literally again in the lap of Avram Avinu. Now, I will say, there's an interesting machlokes exactly what this means, that he sits in the lap of Avram Avinu. Rashi says, Yesh Omrim Meis Hayom. Some say that sitting in the lap of Avram Avinu is a metaphor for death. Rashi then goes on and he says, V'nira Yoshe b'chekos Avram Avinu shenichnas lebris mila. So we'll say, or it means or it's reference to bris mila, right? So again, machlokes also weighs in on this. We're not going to get into this now, but the machlokes actually I will say is important because it helps to frame which Adabar Ava we're talking about. But again, not for our topic for today. But again, machlokes. So Adabar Ava today is sitting in the lap of Avram Avinu. Hayom Nolad Yehuda beBavel. Today, Nolad Rav Yehuda. Furthermore, again, so Rabbi says today Rav Yehuda was born in Bavel. And I will say, why was this important? Da Amar Mar Kishemes Rabbi Akiva. Let's listen to this because we say when Rabbi Akiva died, Nolad Rabbi. Now, I will say, remember again, this is Rebbe who's dying now, right? So Rebbe was about to die, said, today, Rav Yehuda was born. So the Gemara says something very interesting. When Rabbi Akiva died, Rebbe was born. Kishemes Rebbe, when Rebbe died, Nolad Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was born. Kishemes Rabbi Yehuda, Nolad Rava. Rava was born. Kishemes Rava, and Rava died, Nolad Ravashi. We'll say, why is this important? Glamdecha, She'in Tzadik Niftar Min HaOlam, Ad Shenivra Tzadik Kamoso. We'll say, this is such a beautiful Gemara. A tzaddik never leaves the world until another tzaddik was born to replace him. Yibal Shalom never leaves us without someone. Without someone. Shene Emar, V'zarach HaShemesh, Uba HaShemesh. Literally, again, the sun rises and the sun sets. And I will say, what the Gemara is picking up on over here is the order is very specific. Right? In other words, what does it mean the sun rises? A tzaddik is born before the sun of the present tzaddik sets. Now I will say, if you notice something interesting, so what the Gemara is really saying is, Kadosh Baruch Hu never leaves the world without a tzaddik. That being said, so right before the tzaddik dies, the tzaddik is born. I will say, but what do you see in this model? Remember, again, it's very nice that before Rebbe died, Rabbi Yehuda was born. There's only one little problem, which is what? Right? Rabbi Yehuda is a baby. Rabbi Yehuda is a baby. So what it does tell you is, like, there is a period of time where the world will operate without what we'll call a functioning tzaddik. Like, in other words, so I know that the next tzaddik is here. I know that the next tzaddik is in the world. Baruch Hu never leaves the world, never leaves Klal Yisrael leaderless. Right? The leader is always here. But there may be some amount of time where there may be a little bit of like a leadership vacuum because the leader is a baby. So again, the plan is always in place, right? There's never a complete leadership vacuum. But there may be a practical vacuum in that it may take a few years for the new tzaddik ultimately to assume his role. Such a beautiful idea. The Gemara says, Ad shelo, first wide line, Ad shelo kavsa shimsho shel Eli, zarcha shimsho shel Shmuel. So let's remember again, Eli was the Kohen Gadol. So before the son of Eli set, in other words, before Eli died, ultimately, again, Shmuel's sun had already begun to rise. Shene Emar, V'ner Elokim Taramichba, U'Shmuel Shochev. So we'll say the idea over here is that this case is a little bit different because in this case, Shmuel began to receive prophecy even while Eli was alive. And Eli recognized that Shmuel was a Navi even before Eli had passed away. So this case is a little bit different than the others, right? Because in this case, again, Shmuel is functioning in the capacity of a Navi and Eli is still alive. In the previous model, the Gemara is saying over here, before a tzaddik dies, the next tzaddik is born. The world is never left absent. I will say, it's an incredibly important Gemara for us to think about. Especially, again, we're living through these days where Klal Yisrael has lost so much. And I will say, it's so important that, we move forward, which of course is a good thing. It's a good thing. But sometimes we move forward too quickly and we forget about everything that has been lost, right? And we forget about the 1,300 neshamas. I would tell you that if you go into the times of Israel, they actually have a very gripping section, two sections. One's titled, Those We Lost and Those We Miss. So the first part is profiles of people who were killed, and the second one is profiles of people being held hostage. And it's incredible, even if you don't read it, you just see the pictures, and you see the ages, and you see where people are taken from, and you see the people who are lost. And I always say, but what's important in a Gemara like this is we understand the tragedy of these things is we feel when someone dies, and especially when someone is murdered, and especially like a mass catastrophic event like we've experienced as a people, we feel like there's a huge void in the world, right? And for us, there is, even those people we don't know, many, right? There's a void in the world. So I will say it's important to understand that even sometimes when we feel a void, HaKadosh Baruch Hu never allows for a void. There's always a plan. And the plan never allows for there to be a void. There's always something mamala that void. Now, I might not feel it right now. We may not feel it right now. For us, it feels like there's this great gaping hole in our hearts. But that's the Gemara is saying. Before the tzaddik dies, right, another tzaddik is always born. Before the void is created, the void is always filled, even if I don't know that it's been filled, and even if I don't feel that it's been filled, but it's always been filled. It's always important from an Emunah perspective to recognize that the Ribono Shel Olam never allows us to be fully incomplete, and never allows the world to be incomplete. The void is always filled. We just don't necessarily know it or feel it yet. It's such an incredible yesod. The Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, good. Tziva Hashem, fine. Tziva Hashem Yaakov Sevivav Tzarav. So we'll say, so ultimately again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu went ahead, Tziva Yaakov. He commanded to Yaakov, Svivav Tzarav, that he's surrounded by enemies. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Kigon, Homanya Lepumnara. This is a reference to Homanya and Pumnara. Rashi says over here that ultimately again was surrounded, right? Was surrounded. Fine. So Rashi says over here, yeah, right? If you look at Rashi, he says, Siva Shem Yaakov Siv Tzarav, Tzarim Hayu Sovim Osam Ba'artzam, Dainu Amon Moav, Shetzil Yosem Minakol. So again, unfortunately, I will say a very relevant pasuk. Siva Shem Yaakov Sivav Tzarav, that what? The Baruch Hu made it that Yaakov is surrounded by enemies. Eretz Yisroel is surrounded by enemies. Am Yisrael is surrounded by enemies. I will say, it's important to understand, sometimes people lament anti-Semitism. And we should lament anti-Semitism. We should combat anti-Semitism. It's important for us to know we could combat as much as we want, but l'maisa, it's a reality. It's a reality, and it's important for us because sometimes, we're so shocked. I'm so shocked that there's anti-Semitism spewing on college campuses. Why are we shocked? Why are we shocked? And I will say one of the most incredible things that has happened in this current reality is that the very thin veil of anti-Israel sentiment has been pulled back. And tada, what does everyone see? That in fact, anti-Israel sentiment is rabid anti-Semitism. The world has hid behind the fact that no, we don't hate Jews. We just hate the state of Israel. No, you don't. If you hate the state of Israel, you hate Jews. You hate Jews. And you can see, again, I would say, the most vile forms of hatred. I was saying this, you would think that people, we all have our prejudices, right? But hopefully a person is sophisticated enough to understand perhaps what they should or they shouldn't say in a public setting. It's fascinating to see how people are just stupid. In other words, unable to even mask how they truly feel. But you know what that shows? When a person lacks an awareness to understand how what they're saying is going to be heard and how you might lose your job or you're not going to get hired by companies, you would think people would be a little bit smarter to mask it a little bit. I will say there's a concept in, but we're going to read it in just a little bit in Parashas Vayira, where Avram Avinu by the Akedah, Vayachavosh Avram Eschamra, Avram Avinu went ahead and saddled his own donkey, right, to go up to the Akedah. So Rashi HaKodesh is bothered by why does Avram Avinu saddling his own donkey? After all, again, he has a servant. So Rashi HaKodesh says something beautiful. Rashi says, Ava Makalkel Asashura. Love disrupts the natural order of things. Right? Avram Avinu loved his son, loved the HaKadosh Baruch Hu so much, he saddled his own donkey. There's something else that also disrupts the natural order of things, which is sinah. Hatred, makalkel as ashura. Hatred disrupts natural order. Hatred disrupts rational thought. And when people are consumed by hatred, they simply do irrational things. That's what we're seeing. We're not just seeing anti-Semitism. We're seeing hatred. Hatred. And when hatred comes out, even people who would normally have enough forethought to say, I probably shouldn't say that publicly because it's going to be viral in 10 seconds, right? And the whole world is going to know about it. They lose rational thought. That's what I will say. That's what we're seeing. Tziva Shem Yaakov, Sevivav Tzarav. Ultimately, again, Yaakov, Klal Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael is always surrounded by enemies. You'll say to yourself, "Come on, Ribbon Shalom, really? That's our chelik in this world." I will say there is a beauty to be surrounded by enemies. What's the beauty of being surrounded by enemies? You recognize that we have no one, absolutely no one to rely on except the Ribono Shel Olam and each other. I will say, let's be very clear. There are no friends. And the friends that we have today are not going to be the friends tomorrow. The Jew has learned this lesson over the years. Our friends are temporal friends, are episodic friends. That's the friendship waxes, the friendship wanes. That's the way life works. We have HaKadosh Baruch Hu and we have each other. That's what we have in this world. And that's why, again, strengthening our relationship to the Ribono Shel Olam to the best of our ability, strengthening the achdus, our relationship to one another. That's what assures us of success. Everything else could help like in a stopgap fashion. But those are the only two relationships that we have and will always have. Tziva Hashem liyakov, Sediv of Tzar. Incredible. Rabbi Yehuda Amar ki gona mayil kum nara. Vahi ki navi upaltayu ben ayomes. Va'aful al panai ve'ezak kol gadol va'omer ahei Adoni Hashem. So we'll say, okay, switching gears. So that's the end of the Rebbe story. That's the end of the Rebbe story, right? So Rebbe passed away. These are all things the Rebbe did on his deathbed. Then we'll say we're switching gears over here, and we come to Yecheskel, right? And ultimately, again, so Yecheskel, we'll say over here, is lamenting. Well, it sounds like he's lamenting the death of this individual by the name of Platayu ben Benaya. Platayu ben Benaya died, and ultimately, again, and Yecheskel is crying out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ahei Adoni Hashem, woe Hashem, that this guy, Platayu died, sorry. Not right, Platayu died. So I will say, the Gemara says, Rabbi Shmuel, Chadamar L'tova, V'chadamar L'ra. So this machlokes was, this guy Platayu, was he evil or was he wicked? Sorry. No. What was he good or was he bad? Right? Was he good or was he bad? So I said the Gemara says, listen to this. Mandam L'tova. So the one who says that he was good, Kiha de istandira de Meshan chazed de Buchanetzah. Listen to this. We'll say the ruler of Meshan. Now again, we spoke about Meshan before, right? Meshan was genealogically unfit. Right? The ruler of Meshan was the son of Nebuchadnezzar. Okay. Now watch this. So Shalach le mikuli hay shivaya da'ayis lecha lo shadarta lon dekai lekaman. So he sent a letter. So this guy, the ruler of nations, sent a letter to the Shver, to Nebuchadnezzar. He said, Shver, you conquered all of these lands. You have all of these slaves now, and you didn't send me any slaves. Achutzba, you didn't send me any slaves. So what happened? By the Shadur, in Israel. So Nebuchadnezzar felt bad. He wanted his right. He liked his son-in-law. He was going to send them the best slaves. He also who were the best slaves? The Jews. He was going to send them of Klal Yisrael. Armalei Platayu ben Benayo. Alam dechashvina neko mikamach. Va'avdin nezlu lahasam. So ultimately, this guy Platayu said to Nebuchadnezzar, you know what? Keep the Jews with us. Keep the Jews with us. Send Meshan other avadim. So I will say, so Platayu allowed the Jews to be spared this fate of being sent to Meshan, which apparently would have been much worse. Va'amar Navi, Misha asa tova b'Yisrael yamos b'chatzi yamav. So I will say, so apparently this guy Platayu died young. So the Navi Yecheskel had incredible akar to Platayu that he prevented the Jews from being exiled to Meshan. So the Navi lamented, how could someone who was so good to the Jewish people die so young? Uman Damar Lara, the one who said ultimately again that Platayu wasn't good, what did he say? Techsev Vatava Osi al Shar Beis Hashem HaKadmoni Apona Kedima. So I will say, so the pasuk in Yecheskel, still Yecheskel says as follows. Right, he came with me to the gate of the Beis HaMikdash, right, the eastern gate. Apona Kedma, V'nei b'Pesach Ashar Esrim v'Chamishin Ish. 25 people went at the gate. Ve'era b'Socham Es Ya'ozniya ben Ezer, Ves Platayu ben Benayo, Sari Ha'am, Uksiv. So we'll say all of these people came to the Beis HaMikdash, including this guy Platayu ben Benayo. And what happens in Uksiv, Va'yavei Osi al Chatzar Hashem, Beis Hashem HaPnimis. They had brought me to the inner courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. V'nei Pesach Heichal Hashem min Olam ben HaMizbeach. So their back was to the Heichal, upneihem kedma, and they were facing east. So the Gemara says, I understand. Mimasha shneimar upneihem kedma, any of their shachareihem klapim marav. So we'll say, so obviously, if they're facing east, that means their backs are to the west. Right? That's obvious. So the Gemara says, Matam lomar achareim el Heichal Hashem. So why does it have to say that their backs were facing to the Heichal, to the Beis HaMikdash? Malamed she'mafriyin atzman umasrizin atzman klapim mayla. Abba said these people assembled. What did they do? They faced their backs in the direction of the Beis HaMikdash and they defecated in the direction of the Beis HaMikdash. So there was a mass chilul Hashem, a mass desecration of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. Who participated in this? This guy Platayu ben Benayahu. So the Navi said, Nisha asara hazos b'Yisrael yamos amitaso. So apparently again Platayu, he died young, but apparently he died on his bed, like he died, like a serene death. So the Navi said, someone who caused such a chilul Hashem, should die a serene death. That's the Nav's. So therefore, Rabbi say, a fundamental machlokas about this guy Plataya ben Menayo. Was he good in that he saved the Jews from being exiled to Meshan, or ultimately again was he bad in that again he obviously engaged in this terribly disparaging behavior in the Beis Hamikdash? This time the Shmuel Damadora, it apparently is Shmuel ultimately again who says that he was bad. The Amar Rabbi Bar Avin Amar Shmuel Mushchani Harehi Kagolu Liyuchsin. The city of Mushchani has the status of Babel for Yichus, right? Mishan lo chashula. In Mishan they weren't choshish for it. Lo mishum avdos v'lo mishum mamzerus. So both say Mishan there wasn't a problem ultimately again of avdos or of mamzerus. Ela kohanim shahayu ba lo hikpidu ala grushos. But you know, the only problem in Mishan was that the kohanim who lived there ultimately again married divorcees. Maybe Shmuel in fact says that this guy Platah ben Menayo was good. Ushmuel tamei damar hamafkir avdo yotza lecherus. The one who makes his evet hefker ultimately again he goes to cherus. Ve'enu tzarach get shiur, and he doesn't even get shiur. Shne'emar kol evet ish miknas kasef evet ish v'lo evet isha ela evet sheyish lo rishus l'rabba alav kari evet. An evet who is beholden to a master is called an evet. Evet shin rabba rishus alav in kari evet. But an evet whose master doesn't have rishus over him is not called an evet. Sefer Rabosai could very well be that Allah Chalamaysa there were slaves that were sent ultimately again to Meshan, but those slaves effectively became emancipated. Because remember again, once you send your evet ultimately to a foreign place, it's as if you emancipate him. Okay? So we'll say, so fundamental machlokes about this guy, Platayu ben Menayo. Was he good? Was he bad? And we'll say, you know, what's also, there's another possibility. What's the other possibility? Is that he did both of these things, right? On one hand, he saved the Jews from being sent to Mishan. On the other hand, he engaged in this terrible Chil Hashem. And I will say, isn't that the story of most of our lives, right? There's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad, right? There's some stuff that I do that's really wonderful, and there's some stuff that I do. I mean, maybe not of this level of Platah ben Menayo, right? Baruch Hashem, this I could say, right? This I haven't done, Baruch Hashem. But L'maaseh will say most of us are a composite, ultimately, of mitzvos and averos, and who we are. So who am I? Am I tzaddik? Am I a rasha? What's the answer? It really depends on the moment, right? It depends on where I'm holding your life. Most of us are a composite of extreme good and unfortunately sometimes extreme negativity. I'm Rabbi Shmuel. So to Rabbi Meir, V'cham say, I will say, now we are coming into a totally other school of thought. I will say, in our previous model, essentially what we had was like this. You have Babel. Babel is the purest of the pure genealogically. Under Babel, what do you have? Eretz Yisroel. And then under Eretz Yisroel, what do you have? Everywhere else. Now, both say, now in that model, everywhere else has an assumed level of genealogical impurity, right? Impurity. So, like the general lands, impurity. Eretz Yisrael, mostly purity, but still some impurity. And Babel, complete purity. Now, there's another model, right? That model is Rabbi Meir. The new model, Rabbi Chacham say, Kal ha'aratzos becheskas kashrus imomdos. And generally, again, both say, what do we say? That Allah Chalamaysa, people enjoy a presumed status of genealogical purity. No matter where you come from, we assume that if you present yourself as a Jew, we take your word that you're a Jew, and we also take your word that we assume that Allah Chalamaysa you're genealogically fit. Amemar Sharilei the Rafuna Barnasan, Leminsav Isisa, Nichuzaisa. So ultimately, again, Amemar allowed Rafuna Barnasan to marry a girl from Isisa Chuzaisa, a girl from Chuzaisa. What's your logic? Say, that all lands ultimately again enjoy a presumed status of genealogical purity. So we'll say, but all these other people don't have this particular teaching, don't have this particular ruling. So we'll say, so ultimately again, so we'll stop over here for today. Even though again, all these other Rabbanim did not have this Mesorah, this is a new shita that comes on the scene, I will say. So again, up until now, the Gemara says what we've been talking about different gradations of Babel, Eretz Yisroel, rest of the lands, that's Rabbi Meir. But the Chum introduced the idea, there is a presumed cheskes kashrus. That at the end of the day, halacha l'maisa, we assume that someone is kosher, unless we know to the contrary. Rabbi say we'll continue with this tomorrow, and in a minute we'll have to see exactly what the halacha l'maisa is. Shkoyach.